In 1648, a sultan's own soldiers dragged him from his palace and strangled him with a bowstring. He wasn't the only one, and he wasn't even the worst fate a sultan on this list would face. Over 600 years, 16 men held the same throne. This is their story. Osman was not a king. He was the leader of a small group of Turkish warriors living on the edge of the Byzantine Empire in what is now northwestern Turkey. Around the year 1299, he broke away and started his own state. It was tiny, just a few villages and a handful of soldiers on horseback. But Osman gave his name to that state, the Ottomans. Over the next 2 centuries, his descendants slowly swallowed the crumbling Byzantine Empire. 600 years later, they ruled land on 3 continents. It all started with one small warband. Murad I took the small state his father left him and turned it into something far bigger. He pushed deep into the Balkans, into Europe itself, conquering city after city. In 1389, his army faced a coalition of Serbs and their allies at a place called Kosovo, one of the most important battles of the Middle Ages. Murad's forces won, but afterward, while walking through the bodies on the battlefield, a wounded enemy soldier pulled a hidden knife and stabbed him. The Sultan who had just won his greatest victory died right there, on the very ground he had conquered. Bayezid earned the nickname the Thunderbolt because he moved his army incredibly fast, conquering land across the Balkans and Anatolia almost faster than anyone could react. Then he made a fatal mistake. He went to war against a far bigger conqueror, Tamerlane, ruler of a vast empire in Central Asia. In 1402, near Ankara, Tamerlane's army crushed the Ottoman forces and captured Bayezid alive. Some stories say Tamerlane locked him in an iron cage and dragged him around as a trophy. True or not, one thing is certain. The young Ottoman Empire nearly died with him, only decades after it began. Mehmed II became Sultan at just 19, with one obsession: taking Constantinople, the ancient capital protected by walls that had never fallen in over 1,000 years. In 1453, he did something nobody expected. When his ships couldn't get past the city's harbor chain, he had dozens of warships dragged overland on greased logs, straight into the water on the other side. After weeks of relentless siege and cannon fire, the ancient walls finally fell. Constantinople became Istanbul. 1,000 years of Byzantine history ended in just 53 days, and Mehmed earned the title history remembers him by, the Conqueror. Selim took the throne after forcing his own father off it. His enemies called him the Grim, for very good reason. In just 8 years on the throne, Selim doubled the size of the Ottoman Empire. He crushed the Persians in battle, then turned south and conquered Egypt, along with the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. With Egypt came something enormous, the title of Caliph, the supreme religious leader of Islam. From this point on, the Ottoman Sultan wasn't just a king anymore. He was the leader of the entire Muslim world, and his empire now stretched across 3 continents. Süleyman inherited an empire that was already huge and made it even bigger. He led his army all the way to the gates of Vienna, deep in the heart of Europe, and very nearly took the city. But Süleyman wasn't just a conqueror. He rewrote the empire's laws so completely and so fairly that his own people gave him a second title, the Lawgiver. Art, poetry, and architecture flourished under his rule. By the time he died, the Ottoman Empire covered 25 million people across 3 continents. This was the absolute peak. No sultan after him would ever hold this much power again. Selim II never really wanted to be sultan. He preferred wine and comfort to war and government, and his enemies nicknamed him the Sot. In 1571, his navy suffered a disaster at the Battle of Lepanto, off the coast of Greece. A combined European fleet destroyed most of the Ottoman ships in a single afternoon. For the first time in over a century, the Ottomans looked beatable at sea. The fleet was rebuilt within a year, almost as large as before. But the myth that the Ottomans could never lose at sea was gone for good. Osman II became Sultan at just 14 years old. By 18, he had a dangerous idea. Get rid of the Janissaries, the elite soldiers who had protected and quietly controlled the Sultans for centuries. Osman began building a new army, loyal only to him. But the Janissaries found out first. In 1622, they dragged him out of his own palace, threw him in prison, and strangled him. He was the first Ottoman Sultan ever removed and killed by his own soldiers. After Osman, every Sultan understood the throne was never fully safe, not even from the men meant to guard it. Murad IV grew up watching chaos and rebellion tear the empire apart. When he finally took full control, he decided that fear was the only way to fix it. He banned alcohol, coffee, and tobacco across Istanbul, and reportedly walked the streets in disguise at night, executing anyone he personally caught, breaking his rules. Tens of thousands died under his reign, but it worked in a brutal way. Murad retook Baghdad from the Persians and restored real order to an empire that had been collapsing for decades. He would be the last truly strong sultan for a very long time. Ibrahim spent years locked in a small room called the Kafes, the cage, terrified his brother would have him killed, like so many Ottoman princes before him. He wasn't the first. His uncle Mustafa I had already been driven half mad by that same isolation. By the time Ibrahim became sultan, the fear had broken his mind. He filled his palace with fur, and in a fit of paranoid rage, had his entire harem drowned in the Bosphorus. In 1648, his own soldiers strangled him with a bowstring. The cage had created the very madness it was meant to prevent. Mehmed IV became sultan as a small child, right after his own father was strangled by the Janissaries. For most of his long reign, others actually ruled in his name. In 1683, his generals made one final, ambitious push to take Vienna and break deep into the heart of Europe. For weeks, the city was surrounded and slowly starved out. Then a relief army arrived from the north and crushed the Ottoman forces just outside the city walls. The gates of Vienna held. It was the moment the empire's centuries of expansion finally stopped, and the slow, long retreat began. Ahmed III ruled during a time later called the Tulip Era, a golden period of palaces, poetry, fireworks, and gardens filled with imported tulips from across Europe. On the surface, it looked like a true golden age. Istanbul got its first printing press, new fashions arrived from Paris, and the elite held endless parties in candlelit gardens. But underneath all the beauty, the empire's army and economy were quietly falling behind the rest of Europe. In 1730, a popular uprising forced Ahmed off the throne for good. The flowers had covered up a crumbling foundation. Selim III looked at Europe's modern, disciplined armies and realized the Ottomans were falling dangerously far behind. He tried to build a new, Western-style military force completely from scratch. The Janissaries saw this as a direct threat to their centuries-old power and privileges. In 1807, they rebelled, forced Selim from the throne, and locked him away in the palace. A year later, during another uprising, he was murdered inside the very palace he had once ruled. Selim had seen the future of his empire clearly. He simply didn't live long enough to build it. Mahmud II learned everything from Selim's death. He waited patiently, built loyalty quietly among the right officers, and prepared carefully before making his move. In 1826, he finally struck. When the Janissaries rebelled against his reforms one more time, Mahmud's new artillery units surrounded their barracks and destroyed them completely. Thousands died in a single, bloody day. It became known as the Auspicious Incident. After nearly 500 years, the soldiers who had made and broken sultans at will were finally gone, and the empire could begin to truly modernize. Abdülhamid II ruled a shrinking empire surrounded by enemies, both real and imagined. He built one of the largest spy networks in the world, with informants in every palace hallway and government office. He censored newspapers, banned the very word revolution, and crushed any hint of opposition before it could grow. His many critics gave him a lasting nickname, the Red Sultan. Despite the fear he created, he was the last Ottoman Sultan who actually held real, personal power. After him, the sultans who followed would mostly just reign, while others, far away from the throne, actually ruled. Mehmed VI inherited an empire already defeated in World War I, occupied by foreign armies, and falling apart from the inside out. A new leader was rising fast in Turkey, Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk. He built a nationalist movement that simply had no place left for a sultan. In November 1922, the Ottoman Parliament formally abolished the Sultanate itself. Mehmed left the country quietly, on board a British warship, the very last of his line. 623 years of Ottoman rule ended, not on a battlefield, but with a single piece of paper.